Welcome to the Chit Chat, a monthly podcast series with Shashi Seshadri. Join us as we sit down with Skewb's CEO and co-founder for meaningful conversations about what makes Skewb Skewb. From answering your questions to welcoming inspiring guest speakers, nothing is off the table. So grab your headphones and a cuppa, settle in, and let's dive into this month's episode of the Chit Chat. So here we are, a month gone by already. Well, technically it's 5 weeks this time, due to a delay on my part.
Correct. I was just hoping that the sentence was constructed the right way.
Due to a delay on my part. But here we are, episode 4 already of the Chit Chat. And this episode is entitled Football and Finance. So Shashi, why don't we kick things off by you introducing the Skewb family members who are joining us today?
Thank you, Jess. I think first of all, Steve, it'll be a year since, it'll be a year in a couple of weeks since you've been with us, and you're still smiling, and we all know there is a team called Nottingham Forest now in the scheme of things. Even Indu knows that because she first thought it was some forest somewhere. And she was going down the Robin Hood line, and then we said, no, it's got something to do with football, by the way. And she said, oh, do they have a team? Is there a stadium? Is there a ground? Anyway, knowledge is always good. We enrich ourselves, and I think this is perhaps Forest's best season in a while, but the first of many more, as they say. But now it's fab to have Steve on board, and wow, such a different personality, and just what we thought we were hiring a year back. It'll be good to see what Steve says when he goes through it. And then we've got Paul. He's like the silent assassin from Liverpool. Yeah.
Okay.
When we interviewed, Paul was so serious that I never thought Paul would smile. But then when he really came into the office and found his soul, found his feet, and all of that, by God, we enjoyed. So absolutely, this is magic in the scheme of things. But equally, I think on a serious note, I've never had the comfort of such a seamless transition in the finance side of things, especially for someone like me who's been at the helm of this business for the last 6 years. It is a big thing to really have that comfort, and I think that comfort is imminent in how Steve and Paul, Paul operate. So yeah, I'm extremely close to them, and yeah, I mean, we vibe, I think. But I leave that to you to conclude in 60 minutes from now on. But welcome, Paul.
You didn't big Liverpool look like you did Forest.
Oh.
I noticed there.
Indu already knew about Liverpool, that's why.
Oh, okay then.
Mate, this is just a kick-off.
You haven't disappeared underneath the radar for 23 years.
This is kick-off. You remember what happened in that? The first half was Forest, and then it was Liverpool all the way. Yeah, so we're just building this up in the scheme of things. This is going to be all about you, you know that.
No problem.
So no, welcome, Steve and Paul.
It's quite a good point, actually, because I almost forget that we're only just coming up to a year with I've only ever known Steve in my life at Skewb, but it might be quite interesting just for you to share a couple of reflections on what life was like before these two men came into our life. How did finance work within Skewb before these people were here?
No, there was a structure behind it. Don't get me wrong. With Rachel and Hazel and the team, they've been there, for a long time. But there is always a subtle shift in dynamics when you see them doing all the right things and everything else. But also, it was a world which was slightly smaller, less complex. We hadn't gone into the private equity world, and a lot of things very organically centered around how I ran the business right from the word go, because it felt like year on year it was a very owner-led business. So I think this year has been one where we've started to have each other's voices come out a bit more, and with each other's voices come out a bit more, that respect comes out a bit more, being honest, because we get to know each other's styles of how they work and all of that. But that transition has been very seamless. I think I'm sure Steve and Paul would echo. Very grateful to Rachel and the team on how the historic stuff has been transitioned. But I think when I say how was it before and after, I think the biggest thing was not around how the finance function operated. I think it's about how I operated with the finance team. That's where the difference has been has been profound this year.
Yeah. And Steve, before I join any company, there's certain steps I take to feel it out, figure it out, do a bit of research. So before Skewb even became your home, what sort of steps were you taking to feel out Skewb, and can you remember what your first impressions were of it?
Well, so yes and yes. Short answer. The like you say, everybody checks out their new employer to the best extent one can, and I was lucky. I came in partly because of, but I came in the middle of a diligence process with private equity, which gave me the opportunity beforehand to talk at length with the private equity guys who were coming in. They'd clearly seen something, that's why they were investing. What had they seen? What were their concerns? Where were their areas of focus? All that sort of stuff. So, I was fortunate in that regard, in that the timing works to have, spend some time with those guys to really work out where they were in their heads, which answers an awful lot of those sorts of questions as to, what is the opportunity, what are the issues, where do we see some weaknesses, what needs to happen. So that was really helpful beforehand, but also, day one, month one, that was gold as far as I was concerned, because we were in the middle of a diligence process.
Yeah.
You've got to get around the entire business. You've got to take over a diligence process, with the greatest respect in the world, but particularly the finance side of it.
Yeah.
You've got to take over a diligence process. You've got to get into every single nook and cranny of the business. You've got to go and talk to an awful lot of people in an awful lot more detail than you would talk to them 3.5 weeks out of every month. And that all happened in the first month. So by the time we got to Easter, I'd been here, let's call it 2 months, and we'd been through an entire diligence process. We'd gone through 3 years worth of history of the business in minutiae detail. We'd gone through the finance, gone through the legals, we'd gone through the commercials, we'd spoken to customers, we got commercial DD, we got the whole lot.
Yeah.
There's my library of just about everything I ever needed to know about the history of Skewb in 6 weeks, 2 months.
It's interesting that I think across the company, a lot of people, when they think about their first few weeks at Skewb, they do feel like they're kind of swept up and carried along as well. So it's interesting that even from a finance point of view, that would still be the case. Can you remember the first time you met Shashi and what you thought of him?
Yeah. Well, he was 20 minutes late for my interview. So and
that happiness felt very genuine.
However, there is
what you should have said is, that's only 20
That's
minutes.
not like him.
That's plus or minus 15% within.
I think he was late for my interview as well.
Well, then there's a recurring theme.
Sorry.
We'll get to you,
Teaming
Paul.
up.
But there's a beautiful symmetry to this, because I then had 20 minutes with actually one of the independent advisors who was going through the private equity transaction, who turned out to be a Forest fan.
Oh, gosh.
So
all comes back to football.
I had 20 minutes talking about football before meeting Shashi for the first time. And then
two out of a small microcosm of supporters.
I mean, if you want to go back to Tuesday night, there was quite a few more than 2 there. But and then we spent half of our interview probably talking about cricket.
Really?
So
Tenbridge.
Oh.
So there was a lot of sport involved in the first meeting with Shashi.
But that doesn't surprise me, because like you were saying, anyone who comes into Skewb, it's about your culture, it's about who you are as a person and what value you're bringing. It's not just about your skill set, which people have in abundance here. And do you think, so it's coming up to your year anniversary working together? What have you...
No, we held hands a few times in board meetings as well.
You've held hands?
And on stages.
And on stages and stuff, winter events and all of that stuff. I mean, we have created some controversy this year on those fronts.
Yeah, but I think like Shashi said, a lot of a strong relationship comes out of that mutual respect for each other. Steve, what do you admire in particular and respect about Shashi?
I mean, I think that's
a big question.
No. It's quite a simple question to answer. There isn't. Everybody has peaks and troughs in their lives, in their emotions, all that sort of stuff. Apart from this man, you walk in the office and you're a constant energy, source bundle of energy, focus, it's actually quite remarkable, really, that you can have such a steady hand on a ship of 150 people. Fundamentally, that's. You asked what do I respect out of it? I mean, that's
you've hit the nail on the head.
That's an incredible thing to be able to do.
Yeah, that's really lovely, Steve. And then, of course, Paul came into our lives. Mm-hmm. And it's funny that you were serious in your meeting, because your first meeting, I don't think of you as a serious... You always have this cheeky glint in your eye, I think.
I think the room was a bit daunting as well, isn't it?
Yeah, so we was in the boardroom. There was... I got here, Lou welcomed me. She's very warm and took me all around the office. And then myself and Steve sat on the same side of the table in the boardroom. Oh. And then the team assembled, and I've got opposite me, I've got Lou, Indu, Shashi, Govinda, and then they fired questions at me, and it was
that's a lot of people.
For a moment, it did feel like a joint interview was taking place.
For Steve too.
But for the context, you do also have to remember that Paul and I had worked together previously for 10, 11, 12 years. So
take us back. What's your history? Not your beef, your history.
So Paul was FC at the small stockbroking investment bank business that we both worked at, and I was FD there for the last 6 years of that time. So Paul and I had worked hand in hand together for a considerable period of time. Hence why when the need to fill a position here came, there was really only one name in the ring that I was interested in going to talk to, which was Paul. But so the interview did rather feel like a them v us, two versus the rest of the ring sort of a conversation.
If you take the jokes apart, I think I always believe that a right hand needs to be one that one is trusted. Yeah, and Steve had come into the business. Steve came through a process, so we didn't know Steve from before, and it was really good when Steve spoke about Paul and the fact that they had they had worked long-term. I was going to say long-term relationship, and then I said that could be misconstrued in several forms, but they'd worked together long-term. The trust was very imminent in how Steve spoke about Paul. So for me, Paul was in the camp from the word go, and it wasn't about whether there was a budget or a role or whatever. I just said to Steve, let's go and get Paul, because so when we came into the interview process, I think it would have taken a lot for that not to happen. And hence I focused a lot about gossip and personalities and tastes and habits and that sort of stuff, because I was keen to understand Paul the person.
I think it was a question, tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
And the two things I raised, because it was the summer and I'd just been to a very nice restaurant, was food and cricket. Nice. And I think that turned it, and we got to know each other.
Yeah, because cricket, I said, flipping, that is good. Oh yeah, that is spot on. And then, of course, we said we need some goss from Paul about Steve. Which
Still
comes
waiting.
It comes in drips, isn't it? We work on it in drips. So it's a marathon we're running. 12 years, there'll be lots of goss. You can't say it all in 1 week. So yeah. But I think over time, Paul's personality has really blossomed. We've started to see Paul the person come out a lot louder, as much as Paul's work, because he's very silent. That's why I say silent assassin, because he very quietly gets it done. It feels like there's not a lot of effort that goes into it. The numbers turn up when they turn up. The numbers don't change. So they are what they are. If something's missed, something's not missed, there's an honest narrative about it, and we work together to solve it. We don't operate that relationship where we say, oh, well, why did you not do it? Why did you not do it? Because, it's not black and white. It's grey. And in grey, with numbers to work towards black and white, we all need to understand each other and have a bit of tolerance with each other. So I think that's very important, I feel. And,
And Paul, for you, so you two used to work together, then you took a bit of time apart, and obviously Steve had been working at Skewb for a while. When you came in and saw him after a bit of a gap working together, did you notice any changes in him at Skewb to how he'd been before?
Yeah, I think so, looking back now. And I'd say both of us, that it was quite stressful before. We're not in the greatest situation at previous places. It was very intense and high pressure, and I think definitely both of us. It's a nice bit more relaxed here. It does feel more of a family, and that is such a great change. It's brilliant. I think it brings the best out in you, and it's
And to be fair to Paul and Steve, I think when he uses the word relaxed, it doesn't mean relaxed in pace. What it is because I know the context when Steve came on board and all of that. It's the context of the business situation. And the turnaround that they were in the middle of is totally different. It wasn't a growth narrative. It was a narrative of sustenance and a narrative of keeping things afloat and all of that.
Yeah, we had financial services is a extremely regulated industry.
Yeah.
Possibly more so than the utilities, albeit utilities is heavily regulated. But that regulation is to the detriment of that sector. But I'm not about to end up on a half-hour rant about regulation in the financial services sector, although I could. But that meant that business was constantly trying to cut costs to stand still.
Yeah.
It's not a growth environment. This is a completely different, far more positive situation, driven partly by regulation, but a positive regulatory macro environment. So that makes it a far more enjoyable place, circumstance to work within.
It's nice to be part of a positive story where the business is going somewhere. As, and Steve says before, it was sort of fighting fires all the time and trying to cut costs. Whereas, this is great that you feel that you can see something is building, and it's it's a much nicer environment to be part of. So
And I do feel in that sort of mindset, it's really fab to see both Steve, Paul, actually not look at numbers as numbers, but look at the narrative behind the numbers. I mean, that support and that contribution has been immense, and it comes with understanding them as people, because everyone has a point of view. And I think the ability to bring a narrative to numbers, I think, is really vital, because that also is part of the Skewb narrative. But it also gives a texture to the quality of the people who come in, because I think the soul is very vital with that. The ability to contextualize the why about it is really important, and that also builds trust with the the rest of the business and Skewbers, isn't it? Finance is not then seen as this function on the side that that just cuts cloth or tells you how much is in the box. I mean, I don't know if you're coming to it or not, but flipping Steve was at the heart of our summer event. And he contributed to ideas with the winter event, so much so that it's brilliant, because when the CFO orchestrates the budget in a way that it works, I mean, I found it relaxing.
At Skewb, we love a nickname. Millie. I'm trying to think of some other ones now.
Imagination went into that one.
Talk to me about Swifty. Where did Swifty come from, and how did the Swifty Appreciation Group start?
Well, I think
the whole team's chat group around it, isn't it?
And a HR issue and various other bits and pieces. I think the entire firm is aware of where Swifty came from. My children were lucky enough that their father was sufficiently parental to go and get them some Taylor Swift concert tickets in the summer. So I turned up one day.
The first day of many more days since.
with the Taylor Swift concert that evening to get to, with the family being dropped off here for me taking down all that
head
sort
to
of
toe in
stuff.
sparkly clothes.
Not at that point.
The sparkles were in the car.
The whatever they were called, bands, bracelets, and friendship bracelets, and sparkles and everything else came in the car. Stetsons, all that sort of stuff
Do
later. And
Swifty was born. Swifty was born.
We have pictures, I assume.
I don't think we do we?
We don't have pictures of that, I don't think. But
I think if we talk to Erin,
you might find some.
Yeah, I'm sure Erin would have.
And there's now a WhatsApp group. And
then there became a weekly appreciation group, because then on a Friday in the summer, Steve was getting his legs out. There were different outfits, and he's a bit of a fashionista in the office. I'm not going to lie.
There was a general shock that I don't seemingly wear a suit and shirt I mean, 24/7 seemed to be the shock.
It was, it was.
You
It
don't
was.
have suit pajamas and stuff.
It
like
was.
that seemed to be the
I like
the questions.
suit pajamas.
It was jarring the
Good.
first time, I'm not going to lie, but now, if I came in on a Friday and I actually saw you in a suit,
Well,
I'd
this
be
is smart
so
for my Friday
disappointed.
attire. I'm currently
It
I've
is,
dressed
yeah.
up especially for this.
Have you?
More
Thank you.
appropriate.
We appreciate that, Steve. And I think that same energy comes from Paul as well. Paul, I have such a vivid memory of you on the dance floor at the winter event,
lovely.
giving it beans. And I think the fact that you guys are breaking the mold for what working in finance looks like and what it means goes back to what is so special about Skewb, that we don't conform to stereotypes or rules. We are very different.
I did
proud to be so.
Ancestry DNA was my Christmas present to myself, and one of the traits came up that you enjoy dancing, and I was like, no, what a load of rubbish. And then I did think back to the Christmas party.
I was going to say that's
tune
not.
came on the last one.
Yes.
Got to get up
Yeah,
there.
yeah. And Taylor Swift came on as well, and then I noticed Swiftie got dragged on the dance floor.
No. Swiftie dragged others on.
Did you?
Yeah,
I'm
he did
so
actually.
sorry.
I was going to correct.
I'm so sorry. What else did you find out in your ancestry then?
I am. Well, I'm basically English, a little bit Welsh, a little bit
No.
Irish, and a little bit German.
Really?
Yeah, I can't smell asparagus. I'm well worth 40 quid to understand that. Yeah, that was about it. There was a gap on my mother's side, but I think that's the Irish bit. But I still can't. But I did get quite excited because there was the potential 2 matches, and one was from Birkenhead, just outside Liverpool. But I don't think it's real. So disappointment.
Everything comes back to football.
Yeah.
What data point did you need to have to do this? Like, you needed to be in the UK, is it? To be
No.
born in
I
the
think it's
UK?
global. Ancestry is a
it?
US company.
Check that website link over, mate.
Yeah, I will
just
do. Yeah,
intrigued.
yeah. No, it's interesting. So,
Well,
yeah, no.
for that to come back saying you can't smell asparagus.
Yeah,
specific.
great,
Just
isn't
feels
it? Yeah.
wrong.
You'd have thought a trip to the supermarket would probably have told you that.
That's
No,
right.
my ring finger. No, my
You
index
are
finger is longer than my
40
ring
quid.
finger.
Oh, well, there you go.
Wow.
Okay, so come on then. We've left it long enough. We've left it at least 20 minutes. Let's get into the football chat then. So, friends in many senses of the word. But this week, friends became mortal enemies for a brief moment in time.
Could have.
Could have.
Become.
Okay. Tell me what happened.
I'll go first.
I know.
Liverpool. This is all about
Yes.
Liverpool now.
Who did you support? You watched the game. Who were you supporting?
I said to both of them, I want either a 0-0, which would have been boring, but a 1-1 or a 2-2 would have been the perfect outcome.
There you go.
And it was 1-1. I watched
And the
the match
universe
in full.
delivered.
I did send messages in the middle of the match. The first half made me think, wow. But then when I came back in the next morning, I came into Paul first, and I said, flipping it, that should have been 5-1, mate. Yeah, you guys should have scored. And then I went to Steve and I said, wow, what a brilliant defense Forest have. It's the best ever in the scheme of things. And I think both were true.
Yeah.
In the scheme of things. So, hey, but
Yeah,
you go ahead, go on. Just
we
a bit
didn't
of-
really turn up in the first half.
It was a slow start.
Slow start.
You allowed them to.
Well, yeah, Forest took the lead. Good goal, bad defending. And I thought, this could be fun in the morning. But
Would
yeah.
you have come into work the next
Oh,
day?
we've been here before. Earlier in the season, we lost to Nottingham Forest, the only team that have beaten us this season.
Yeah, and I planned 8 o'clock debrief.
Did you? Oh, gosh.
Oh, the messages.
So you had to go
messages from the CEO. He was happy with the draw. Yeah, and in the end, we got the on 65 minutes. I would have took a draw. We scored, and then we should have won it, but.
I think it should have been 5-1 after that. But
Oh, yeah.
What
Until
defense?
Steve starts.
What defense? I mean,
2-0 after 10 minutes.
3 defenders you all had was so good, and that whole piece around how the manager changed the attack to a hold position. That strategy was brilliant. I didn't know that sort of strategy Forest adopted this season. So. Sorry, Steve. I love it.
Steve, you're sitting back very quiet here. Do you want to...
No, these sorts of conversations always amuse me because and this isn't a Forest Liverpool Paul and I conversation. Every football fan sees their team through extremely rose tinted spectacles.
On that, it's great to go to a match where you're a neutral to see the people around you, how they react, and it's crazy. But sorry.
And you've, Shashi says, and Paul says Liverpool didn't turn up in the first half. You'd had 7 shots before we scored. Yeah, now all of them were from 30 yards, and none of them got within 30 yards of the goal. But we barely touched the ball, and then scored with our first effort. That's just why everybody loves the game of football, really, because that sort of thing can happen, and then you're hanging on for an hour. And on 65 minutes, I was like, if we can just keep this for another 10 minutes, we'll win this. And 2 minutes later, Liverpool go and score from a corner.
From the first touch. What a magical
substitution.
I mean, can you imagine the mood that the guy just comes onto the field, chit-chats a bit, first touch on the ball.
That was the corner taker as well, was his first touch.
Yeah, he just did it like BAU, and he had 2-3 chances in the game, isn't it?
Jota.
Yeah.
It's like everyone has their day, isn't it? It's a bit like Man U last evening. Who would have thought in 12 minutes you'd score 3 goals? It was just meant to be that, that player's day that day, to be honest.
And we don't concede. We've conceded 1 goal prior to that also from corners
for 7.5 hours or something.
But no. But from a corner, we've conceded 1 goal. We're the best team in the league from corners, and it was something stupid number of minutes since we'd last conceded a goal. So, having been battered all the way through the second half, the disappointment to concede from a corner like that was just you'd happily have taken a lesser team scoring from a corner rather than Liverpool in the game, where actually you could have then turned around and gone with 3 points off the top of the league.
Do you all think about your hobbies like sport and stuff, and correlate that with what you do at work in the scheme of things? Does the brain work a particular style in the scheme of things, or do you just or is it just a release mechanism?
I think for me it's a release. It's to step away, and for 90 minutes you don't think of most things in life. You're watching the football and you're totally immersed in that. That's for me personally.
No, same. I mean, personally, when I'm doing sports for the same reason, it's the release and the shutdown rather than why do I follow football? There might be some links in there, I don't know, but that's for somebody cleverer than me.
It has made me chuckle before when I've been walking up behind Steve, thinking, what spreadsheets he going to have up today, what numbers, and on his massive screen, his massive Mac screen, probably the biggest screen in the office, he had his fantasy football team, loud and proud, and it just, I can still picture it in my mind, just walking up behind Steve, sorting out his fantasy football team. I was like, yes, Steve.
I think the link with football and work, probably for me, it's probably management styles and how you see different managers and how they react to players and motivating players, and it's interesting how different approaches. I think that's probably the link I would see.
No, there is somewhere there is a subtle correlation just in that emotive side, isn't it?
And you find lots of examples of business leaders and whatever being very invested in a sports team of whatever sport. So you're right, there must be links in there like that. But I mean, first and foremost for me, and I think similar for Paul, it was something I was brought up on. I've been going since I was knee high to a grasshopper, and it's by now it's just in the blood, and it's slightly infectious. And my wife for her sins had to have a season ticket for a number of years.
Well, I'm pretty sure Indu said she ended up watching some of that game behind you. She sat and watched a bit with you, right?
I think that would have been because she would have been wanting to be part of the banter. Let's face it, we had hyped that game up.
But that's nice.
24 hours leading into that game. Really, it was a Premier League match.
Yeah.
There are many in the week that happened, but that game, because of the combinations and the loyalties and the choices, we had hyped it up seriously to a point where Indu does not watch football matches.
I know.
Yeah, and that day when she was like, "What's the score?" and I said, "Do you know which colour is Nottingham Forest?" So it was just just that sort of stuff, because it creates a momentum, isn't it? And it brings people together and all of that, and it's lovely when you apply the right common sense behind it. It is lovely because you need a bit of that team, and it is a team sport.
Yeah. And how many people can say their CEO messages them when their teams are playing in the evening
Well,
and
not just
has
messages,
that level of
we
investment?
checked in before as well that
Yeah.
do you access messages, and he said something about signal in the ground and all of that. And I said, Paul, come up with something better, mate. Yeah, because we were, and I sent a very dutiful Teams chat.
Very
I didn't
nice.
intrude into their personal spaces. So it was a Teams chat, which means you pick it up when you get a signal. And yeah,
On the way out, it picked it up.
on the way out, he
responded.
did. Yeah, which I think was a first for Steve, because Steve said Paul never responds to messages on the ground, isn't
Wow.
it? So
I mean, typically I have very infrequently messaged him because I only message him when Forest are beaten Liverpool.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
still,
why I didn't respond.
I'm still waiting for responses to the 2 previous messages.
I think there's a piece on the football bit. If we just metaphorize it, and this is where the personalities bit comes, Jess, which you may not know what happened on the Friday morning, which was Paul's original birthday. There were a few of us in the office. Yeah, Paul walked in. We actually sang for him happy birthday twice the previous day, because we thought a few of us are not going to be there the next day, and then some of us changed plans to be there in the office. We sang for him aloud in the scheme of things, which I thought was cool, well planned, a bit coincidental, but it all landed so well, isn't it?
Yeah,
Come on, Paul.
happy
Share
birthday.
that emotion.
Oh, that I've never had a CEO sing happy birthday to me before.
No, there were quite a few of us.
Oh,
in
no,
there. We
absolutely,
enjoyed
but led by the main man. So, yeah, I had happy birthday, had cake, chocolate,
Yeah.
coffees. I mean,
Treated like
who
a
could have
king.
wished for more?
I love that. How long have you been here now, Paul?
I'm 6 months on the 12th
6
of February.
months. And what were can you remember your first week you were just doing LinkedIn learning?
No, the first week, was all the training courses.
Non-stop.
So I am still ahead of the game
But
on the
you
training.
were kind of in a peak position, because you were sat at your desk and you were watching all the comings and goings for a solid few weeks. What were your first impressions watching Skewbers walk around in their day-to-day?
The first one, I can't remember. It probably took me a little bit longer to sort of get up to speed, but it was just sort of open and friendly and just completely different to everything I've ever known in a business, and in a very good way. It's first it was just training courses. Wasn't
It was just
every
LinkedIn
time
learning.
you walk past me,
LinkedIn
I'll do
learning.
another training
Yeah.
course. So and that's got me in good stead. I've got Q3, Q4 done, so that's good. But no, it probably took a couple of weeks to sort of think what's going on here. But it's great how the office set up, how open planned, how on the stools, the usual crew, and it's.
See the key bit, Jess, and I think this is a reflection of our conversation today. We haven't actually spoken about finance that much. We haven't actually spoken about how do you manage the numbers and what do you do this, what do you do that, and all of that. And I think that is such a big positive, because what it says is, amidst all of the banter and personal choices, interests, and all of that, the fundamentals are in very good hands. And I think that is a very, very profound message as we go forward we need to have, because when I'm on the front line working with clients and we're formulating deals and all of that, I need to have the confidence that Steve has got my back, because Steve is very open. If Steve was very stereotype and boxed in a method, I would hesitate to make a few moves on the front line. Likewise, some of the other OPCO members. Likewise, we also work towards not making it difficult. We work towards a balance that we constantly calibrate our positions on. But I think that's a team game. For me, that's why finance and football really makes a lot of sense, because you can be the best striker in the world, but if you go into a team where you don't get too many passes, you can't score. Likewise, you can be the best defender in the world, but you're not the only defender, you're one of three, so you can secure your side, but if the other side is leaky, the goal will get scored. So I think getting that team position lined up metaphorically is very, very important.
But I think
for us.
Finance, or at least our role in business, has changed. And being a little bit serious for a second, but it's changed immeasurably over the last 10, 20 years or so. Finance, frankly, is the consequence of business action. And therefore you have to be in a position that I can tell you what that consequence is going to look like based on what you're thinking of doing or what we're thinking of doing. And it shouldn't be any more complicated than that. And as long as we're having sufficient dialogue that I can say, yeah, that will do that will do this. And then when it does happen, it shows in the numbers, or I explain to you very clearly as to why it hasn't. That's how I see, our responsibility, really. The numbers themselves, shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody else, because if they are, then we're doing it the wrong way around. That's a lag. That's, we can only react to that sort of stuff. We need to be proactive, and we need to tell you, exactly to your point, when you're out on the front line going into battle with something, what the consequence of your decision is likely to be.
And the openness about it. I think 2-3 things we constantly work on is, I think, when Steve came in first, I think within 2 weeks, I had downloaded every graveyard in my backyard to Steve, because I said to Steve, in my world, there's no secrets. And as someone who's holding the pen as a CFO, I think there's 2-3 things we need to work on. One, we need to start to get to know each other and be good friends, which is good, and we continue to work stronger on that, because it takes a lot for, we met, Katie, yourself, Indu and I for a bite on Saturday afternoon, and it was flipping brilliant. We need to put one of those back in the diary, to be honest. But you need a bit of that, because you need to understand the family ecosystem, the thinking, and all of that to be able to do that. To a point where even a few months back, when the 3 of us were sitting, I said to Paul, you should never hesitate to ask anything that doesn't sound right to you. And don't feel you should only go to Steve to ask. We've got an open dialogue, and business needs to be pacey, and there are no secrets. If something is a difficult conversation, it is a difficult conversation. So, and equally, the key piece always, the 3 of us keep looking at, is what are the solutions to a problem that we have. It's not that there aren't any problems, there are problems, but the problems are not profound enough that we can't manage. And I think the trust is there with each other, because I will never let them down. There will never be a day in Skewb where we are saying, finance function, why did you not do this? And likewise, I know the reverse is true, because there will never be a day where Steve or Paul say to me, hey, you messed it up because you picked a wrong deal. So we constantly calibrate positions, and that will make us better. That will move us more towards lead indicators, and that's a constant journey, I think, the scheme of things. What do you feel, Paul? What's your take on that?
I think just in my mind then, I was thinking, I remember back to my interview, was the CEO's door is always open. And I thought, I've heard all that before. That's what they always say. But it genuinely is. You sat out there chatting all the time, and I never, but many businesses, the CEO is kind of it's off limits, and they're always busy and stressful. Genuinely, I think I could walk up to Shashi at any point and have a chat with him, and and if I'm quite open with him about anything. So I think that's really nice, and it really works, and it's great.
And I support both Liverpool and Forest
and Manchester United.
Because it's a game of two halves. It helps that they're not in the same county, which is a big thing. It helps that they don't play often.
The 3 of you will need to go to a football game at some point.
I think so. I think it should be a Manchester United one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because what that then does is they can really take the mick.
I know.
And the way Man U are playing, I think they will be good at taking the mick.
Yeah, neutral ground. Some sort of neutral ground, someone you can all get behind. Hating.
The fact that I feel so proud after a Southampton win last night just says it all, isn't it? But I think that Arsenal one was really good. Would you agree that
the Arsenal,
the 10-man Man U FA Cup game on penalty?
I was thankfully out, so I didn't see it. I was looking at my phone, and I thought, "Where's this Arsenal goal?" And I did see Kai Havertz miss a golden opportunity.
Yeah,
if you don't put the ball in the net, that's what happens.
So,
well, I look forward to hearing how that football match plays out.
Do you follow football, Jess?
I don't. Unfortunately, I come from a broken home.
What sport do you follow?
My mum supports Liverpool and my dad supports Everton.
I like Jess's mum.
Everton. That's a totally different.
So that is why I come from a broken
this
home.
This conversation. Jess meet Paul, Paul meet Jess.
Tram man.
I'm going to send
neutral.
you a picture. My mum has some memorabilia that I think you would be quite interested in.
Talk to us about Everton. What's the influence of Everton in your home?
They grew up around that area. So my dad's from St Helens originally. So he had a choice and he chose wrong, wisely. Some people might say. But and then my husband supports Morecambe, who recently played Chelsea. Yeah. And he got to go. One of our friends is a Chelsea season ticket holder, and he got to go to the game, but he was in the Chelsea end. So that was last weekend, I think. Yeah. So very familiar with the highs and lows of being a diehard.
So what you haven't answered is, who do you support?
I don't support anyone. If I did have to pick...
You don't need to support one team. Like, who would you follow, just generally, like, you know?
Liverpool or Liverpool.
2-3. Oh, that's
I don't follow them as much now, but if there was one team that I would know the most about, which is still very limited because Indu and I are on the same level thinking Nottingham is a forest, but Newcastle United.
Oh dear.
Oh,
where did that come from?
Where did that come from?
Because I used to live there.
Oh.
And I used to live opposite St James's Park. So I would know when the games were on, I'd know if they'd done well or not. And Newcastle, I mean, everywhere. Football is such a huge part of British culture, but Newcastle, it is literally in the DNA of people who live in Newcastle. You live and breathe it. So
I think the Control Hub partnership, we need to get Jess involved because Mark is such a Newcastle fan. we need to line that piece up. But Newcastle was like out of the blue, isn't it?
Yeah, careful.
Expecting something in the northwest.
56 minutes into this podcast, and then Jess comes up with.
I keep it quiet because otherwise I won't get any work done.
I mean, I was expecting Morecambe to be the answer to that.
Yeah, that's what I
thought.
Oh
no!
I've been to Morecambe.
Have you?
I've watched Morecambe at home.
You don't need to go again.
No, there was
Where
only
is
about
Morecambe?
North of
Blackpool. Keep going.
Okay.
On the coast. Very cold.
Yeah, they're
Statue of Eric Morecambe, isn't there?
Why does Dan support Morecambe? Like
that's where he's from.
Oh, right.
That's where he grew up.
And do you follow any sports, given you've lived in Canada for so long?
We followed the Raptors for a bit when they were doing basketball.
Fake football, is that what it's called? No,
yeah, what do they call it? They call it football, but it's...
Yeah, but that's like safe and fake, isn't it?
And they call it hockey, but it's ice hockey. So yeah, we followed all of that when we were there, but the time difference, it's too hard to keep up here. Games are on at like 2:00 in the morning. I'm not up at that time. Unfortunately or fortunately.
Who's your hockey team?
Hockey team, the Leafs.
Oh dear.
I'm so sorry.
I like the Canadians.
Do you?
Never mind.
Oh well, then we won't get on at all.
Never mind.
There is an ice rink in Solihull, you know.
There is, yes.
Is there?
Yeah,
there used to be an ice hockey team that I've also been to see as a kid. Yeah, it used to be called the Solihull Barons.
They moved to Coventry.
They did,
that well-known.
They were quite a good team for a while. I don't follow it anymore. I don't know what's going on.
But yes, they're not anymore. I don't think it exists anymore.
We should start some ice hockey following, to be honest, because it's just a different game, isn't it?
It's a great sport. It's just very hard to follow because it's so fast.
So fast.
Yeah.
So my daughter, who's gone to university in Nottingham, which is completely unrelated to football, has got into ice hockey while she's up there. They're a Premier League, and she's now been 3 or 4 times in her first term. So yeah,
Nottingham have always been a good team, haven't they?
Yeah.
I love this. So we'll go watch a football game or watch a hockey game.
Football game, I think we should do, because I think James and Vince are going to watch Man United.
They are on Sunday.
Yeah, this Sunday, he said, isn't it? Yeah, which is interesting.
Oh, there you go.
Poor guys, never mind.
Well, happiness hasn't come a lot in the last few years. It's not even this season, is it? It's the last few years.
Right, we will continue this chit-chat outside of the chit-chat studio. Any final thoughts from yourselves, Paul, Steve, coming up to your 1-year Skewb anniversary? Time for reflecting.
It's been a lot of fun. I'm hopeful and expecting there to be a lot more fun to come.
This is just the beginning. Buckle up.
Yeah, myself and Steve had a pre-sign-off prize, whatever it is, on earlier in the week, and I think I said the same thing. It's been different, brilliant, and hope it continues. So yeah.
Keep the smiles coming and we'll keep the magic going.
Perfect. Paul, Steve, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jess, for having all of us.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Chit Chat. If you have a question for Shashi, send it to jessica.milligan@skewb.uk. Join us next month for more thought-provoking discussions and behind-the-scenes insights into our company. Until then, stay curious and have a chit chat. Let's keep the conversation going.